Hello, Stefan here. Welcome back to A Manic Odyssey, or welcome to A Manic Odyssey if you are new here. This is something I'm doing every month, where I just go, what the hell did I learn this last month? I did one for January, this one's for February, so go watch the January one if you'd like. Or don't, just stick around for February. This is what I learned in February. The first thing I learned was a reminder. Despite practicing the DBT skills on a daily basis, teaching them to other people, I myself still fall into a lot of cognitive distortions and pitfalls. And the lesson and reminder is, that's okay. It happens. If you fall off the horse, it doesn't mean you have to let the horse trample all over you and then you have to walk it all the way back to the beginning and restart as if you never fell off to begin with. Just get back on the horse. Throughout my life, falling off the horse meant failure, utter and complete failure, restarting, resetting back to ground zero. I no longer believe that, and that's a cognitive distortion I challenge often. So when I fell off the horse of my scheduled content in February, instead of letting it walk all over me, go back and forth, trample like, you are a piece of shit, and then walk all the way back to the finish line and be like, this is what I deserve, just got back on the horse. As soon as I found the energy and the space to make the content I wanted to make, I made it. Get back up on the horse. You can do it. The next thing I learned is that it's challenging to find a balance between subscriber and non-subscriber content. In fact, I discovered that it's challenging to differentiate between what's content and what's not content, but is still art. Social media has made everyone artists, so to speak, but I more ascribe to Syndrome's point of view, where if everyone's super, no one is. If everyone's an artist, no one is, right? So people are making different things with different mediums, and social media can at times be a great place to showcase those things. For someone like me who wants to develop their own writing style and their own creative voice around the camera, in front of the camera, behind the camera, with written word, with spoken word, whatever it may be, social media is this interesting landscape and challenging venue to choose every now and again about what goes where. Like, is this content that I'm making for, Instagram perhaps, or TikTok or Facebook, or is this more of like a YouTube thing, or is it all of them, or is it none of them and it doesn't belong on any of those platforms? It belongs somewhere else, like in a writing competition or a film festival. I learned that it's really challenging to decipher those things, so setting aside time to think about, okay, well, what choice aligns with my values and where am I leading myself towards? Is it towards what I think I want and what I think like the audience wants, or is it towards my life worth living goals, the purposes that I'm setting out for myself for my own peace of mind? The lesson is that, commerce and art will continue to sit at an intersection of complexities, and I will continue to try my damnedest to be as pure as I can within art without trying to be overly judgmental of myself or others who don't do that. Yay for non-judgment. The third thing I learned is that I desperately miss the stage. Like, a lot. I miss doing theater, I miss doing poetry, I miss doing spoken word, I miss hosting events, I miss doing stand-up. And so I took some steps last month to try to get me closer to that goal. It turns out there's a comedy club right by where I live, and so I started looking at when they have open mics, and I've started setting aside money to start paying for those open mics, and this month I will be going. So in the next video, hopefully the lesson learned will be what it's like to get back up on stage, and I can tell you about it. So here's the lesson that I took away from that. If you're on the fence about whether or not to do something that's in line with your values around building your life worth living goals, the thing that's going to give you purpose, joy, and hope, do it! Do it! I will not waste another moment, another day, another month, and not do that. I know what it does. I know it brings me joy. So what the heck, Stefan? Do it. And I will. And I'll let you know how it goes. The fourth thing I learned, and this comes to no surprise to all you out there, but sales is hard. Not that selling something is necessarily challenging, it's more challenging the cognitive distortions around how you are feeling when you are presenting the thing you're trying to sell. So if you don't know, I work at a company called Therahive. It's an online psychoeducation program where we teach the DBT skills, and I get to teach them, and I freaking love it. I started a men's group specifically for men who are having a harder time regulating their emotions, expressing their feelings, or just accessing skills that are solution-oriented for things like anger or depression. And here's the thing. The group is made. It's not filled because it turns out selling is challenging. And here's what I learned. It's not the product. It's me. It's my lack of confidence in myself, the fear of rejection, the fear of how I'm being perceived, and just the literal act of showing up. There's this really silly animated movie that I highly recommend. It's kind of a sleeper hit called Storks, and they always say in the movie, make a plan, stick to the plan, always deliver. I'm really good at making a plan. I'm pretty good at sticking to the plan. I'm not as effective as I want to be at always delivering. And that was one of the goals I set out for myself this year, was to make those even in their deliverables. So being consistent in both making the plan, sticking to the plan, and delivering the plan. I found myself thinking about this as I was trying to sell this group, and I will continue to try to sell this group, and I'm going to just do it. Lesson learned: have confidence in myself and do the damn thing. The next thing I learned is that, boy oh boy, do professional sports teams need the DBT skills. In fact, if you're an NBA coach, in fact, if you are the Lakers coach, JJ, if you're watching this, and your team needs some DBT skills for emotion regulation both on and off the court, hey, I'm your guy. In fact, I don't know if you know, but we started a men's group at therahive.com. You should totally check it out. It was pretty cool. Sports at large definitely could use some DBT skills, specifically the emotion regulation skills, and the mindfulness skills too, and the interpersonal effectiveness skills. I mean, really all of them. Truly. Call me. The next thing I learned is that I'm confused by the concept of an echo chamber. It's not necessarily an evil or negative thing. In fact, you can curate your social media to be a place where you show up and it's very life-giving and it's very triggering in a positive way, right? You open your phone and you start scrolling and it's not doom, it's happiness, it's joy, it's delight, whatever that may be. And some people might view that as kind of using or shielding yourself from the horrors of the world. And then you gotta remember, there's a lot of horrors in the world right now. I'm confused also by the idea that an echo chamber helps us get anywhere as far as like connection goes. So, for example, if I disagree with somebody, I don't need to follow them. However, if I don't go and watch or check out their stuff, how am I going to know what they are disagreeing with me about, or what they are disagreeing with me about, or what their argument is, or what their perspective is, their worldview, what they value, right? If I'm only in my echo chamber, I can't learn. Now, caveat and the dialectic here is that I am from a position of privilege. I come from a position of privilege, right? I am not expelling as much energy around things that are attacking my personhood. So I have excess energy to give to some more challenging topics and then engage with people in a way that's more dialectical than other people might be able to because I have less dogs in the fight. That is a huge position of privilege that I'm well aware of, and I also don't want to lose out on the fact that the echo chamber is something that I think we could be a little more mindful about. All right, let's not demonize people because they don't follow people you agree with. And let's not demonize people because they, I don't know, follow somebody you agree with but disagree with something they post. The politics online are confusing as hell, and I just think that maybe we could all give each other a little more empathy and compassion around this synthetic reality we share. Which brings me to my next point, which is that I don't think C-SPAN should be televised. Now, I'm not saying I don't think that the legislative process shouldn't be accessible to us. No, I want more transparency around the decisions they're making behind all of the closed doors that have impacts on our daily life, these laws that they pass so willy-nilly that will have rippling effects forever. No, I'm specifically talking about the pontification and the grandstanding that we witness on C-SPAN. It seems like politicians are more interested in getting featured as a soundbite on major news networks or social media sites or podcasts than they are with actual legislation. Like, I don't care how emphatic you are on the Congress floor. What's the legislation? What the hell are you doing? Who's the problem? What's going on? It's so rare that I turn on C-SPAN and I actually see a politician or somebody in government non-judgmentally explain why the position they're taking is either ineffective or effective or what works and doesn't work. It's almost always in a super judgmental, pejorative tone. Like, I rarely go on and see some legislator going, I disagree with this bill because of the way that it spends. It's not in line with my values, and it's not in line with the values of my constituents, and here's why. I more often see somebody go, so I read this stupid piece of legislation, this dumpster fire that you want to call legislation, from this stupid idiot person, stupid idiot Democrat, stupid idiot Republican, stupid idiot Independent, blah, 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 right? Now, before you even actually get to the meat of the situation, they've just salted it so much with just nastiness. So maybe if we weren't televising them, they wouldn't feel so compelled to put on a show. But hey, I love some theater myself, just not from my politicians. The other thing I realized is that I don't think Americans understand how much the world watches kind of the content that we create and the rhetoric we're using. That word gets thrown around a lot, like, oh, the rhetoric is dangerous, the rhetoric is this, the rhetoric is that. In reality, if you believe the United States is a evil place, like if that is your judgment, that is the way you feel, and then you see our chosen leader say something offhanded like, we will own the Gaza Strip and turn it into a hotel, it's not surprising that that inspires you to take action. And I think what I learned is that the U.S. continues in its hypocrisy and ignorance, I guess would be my judgments, to inspire the next generation of foreign terrorists. And it makes complete sense to me, because if I grew up in a country that despised the United States, and then I watched the United States continue to just lead with such intense hubris and hypocrisy, I might develop my own narrative around what the solution might be. And if someone is indoctrinating me into that the most effective solution is violence, it's not surprising that so many groups that are anti-American lean towards violence. So the lesson here is be aware of how we are perceived outside of our borders. It does have consequences, and maybe not for this generation, but entirely for the generations to come. I guess that one's just for the government, like they're even watching, but you get it. The next thing I learned isn't really a lesson, it's more of a reminder, just to remind you insurance can be a behemoth of a beast. Super challenging. I know 3 people right now who all meet the requirements to get something that they medically need, and the insurance is like, here's the thing, kiddo, we can't. Yeah, because you don't meet the requirements. And then when you go, well, I do meet the requirements, like, no, I believe you. Let me get back to you in like 30 days. It's gross. It's gross. I don't have a solution. I'm just going to go, pooey, gross. The next thing I learned is how important accurate education can be. We just witnessed an administration demonize an entire group of people, transgender people, because of a few very powerful and potent stories that kept getting recycled through the media. What's challenging is that trans athletes were giving us an opportunity to examine sports at large. It was an opportunity to indict the entire sports world, not just women's sports, sports across the table. What rules do we have in place and why? What are the stipulations around certain advantages? Where do we draw the line with biological, physical, mechanical, engineered advantages versus natural advantages, or how we measure the efficacy or the impact of those advantages. Not too long ago, the issue in women's sports wasn't transgender women, it was the lack of equipment, the lack of marketing, the lack of money in these programs. So my question is, in kicking out the transgender athletes across the board unequivocally, which, what a move, did it solve that problem? Are women's sports suddenly getting a lot more money because they kicked out transgender athletes? Are they getting a lot more marketing because they are getting a little bit more marketing, but not in a way that I think is positive. Is that marketing leading to like bigger audiences, larger payrolls for coaches, greater facilities for teams? I mean, personally, I'm not seeing that hit the news, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. So if you know it's happening, share with me. But it just feels like it was a missed opportunity to indict the system, and instead we demonized one teeny tiny part of it. Poo-poo. The next thing I learned is fairly obvious. Keeping up with the news is downright impossible. Well, specifically the news that comes out on like a daily 24-hour cycle. Especially because you might hear one story, and that might be the core story, but then 10 other news stations or sources repost it in different ways. It's like we're all reading the exact same book, but people want to add their own verb and noun and adjective here to make it their own. And so it's confusing to figure out, well, what's relevant, what's new, what's accurate, versus what's more long-lasting in its impact. Who's done the work and really looked at this in with journalistic integrity, or who's just like looking to get their piece clipped and shown on MSNBC and Fox. I don't know. I personally read Tangle, which tries to be as bipartisan and middle of the road. It does lean a little left as possible, though they would say they don't lean very far left. They would say that because they took a poll and told me that they said that. But I try to get as much news as I can from there, because they also pull from other sources. So I can start there, work my way out. But even then, I have to take breaks, right? That, again, is not something that everybody can do. It's what I advise you to do if you can do it. Not a stipulation, just an observation. I'm getting back into the swing of the news cycle, and it's a current that pulls you out. So I guess just being aware of how much capacity you have to give, and then comparing it to people who don't have the option or the choice to choose their capacity, and trying to be mindful and compassionate towards yourself. And then remembering that getting lost in the big picture is not always the best solution. Sometimes it really is just one starfish at a time. We don't have to solve every problem all at once, all the time. Look around you. Like, I'm looking around my neighborhood. I'm looking around my local government, how the policies I'm seeing at large are affecting the people who I interact with on a day-to-day basis. That, I think, saves me a lot of energy, because I'm not reaching for the White House from California and trying to change things. I'm not even reaching for Sacramento from where I'm at. I'm just reaching in the general proximity of where I can have impact. Immediately. Not metaphorically or hypothetically, not for clout, just fucking in general. The next thing I learned in February was this idea of irreverent extension. So I value irreverence across the board, and sometimes that's very challenging because things that I revere get made fun of, and that it stings, and then I remember, well, It's a little bit of a fair game because I feel irreverence towards a lot of things people feel intense reverence for. Extension is a term in DBT where the therapist takes the idea that a client is saying and then they take it to kind of its furthest extreme to bring about a solution that highlights the real problem versus what the client thinks the problem could be. And so to me, irreverent extension is this idea of taking an extreme, taking it to its extreme, just to kind of highlight the silliness of it. And I'm working on a few ideas to flesh out what that could look like in a dialectical way. Either way, I'm excited about it. But yeah, irreverent extension. Stay tuned. The next thing I learned from February is deadlines, deadlines, deadlines. Deadlines are so important. Gosh, they're so important. Also, so challenging. I'm such a chaotic person, and I value that chaos, and I love the strengths and the abilities it gives me, both creatively, personally, and just in general. The challenge is that sometimes that chaos needs to have a limit set, and sometimes that limit is in the form of a deadline. It is so important to keep deadlines because it's a marker to go towards. Like, for example, in February, I finished my book, or the most recent draft of my book. In March, my next deadline is to write the second draft. Oh, by the way, I'm writing a book, so if you like reading, I've got something for you on the way. But it applies to so much, not just like the social media content stuff, but budgeting, marriage, saving, finances, you name it. You name it. I used to think deadlines were this very terrifying, scary thing, mostly because they were in school. They were just like anxiety-inducing, triggering moments of just like, shit. Now, though, as my own boss and as somebody who's a creative person, it is vital to have deadlines for your own self, right? You can validate the effort. You can get to the finish line and go, I did it. Deadlines, important. Yay. The last thing I learned in February is complicated. I'm noticing it's very challenging to be authentic and try to make content or art in line with themes or like monthly themes. As you know, February was Black History Month, and I really struggled to make content that I felt was in line with my values and belief, not pandering and not virtue signaling. Because if I make a video explaining the complexities of like intersectionality, racism, prejudice, all that jazz, who is that for? Most of the people who follow me already agree with that to begin with, so it would be just kind of like adding fire to the echo chamber. And there are already creators who are Black who are making content that is validating for the population they are trying to reach. I don't need to echo their content, I need to validate it. And so where I landed eventually was in making videos called, Do You Know Me? I put together these videos of important Black transgender people or non-binary people throughout the years who have had huge impacts on our life, on American culture, on society at large. And that felt more true to the experience of what it's like to walk through Black History Month because I genuinely didn't know a lot of these people. And so sharing about them and seeing some of the comments meant maybe other people didn't know about them either, even other Black creators. All that to say, I think it could be more effective to take the month to just seep yourself in what the month is about. Really soak it up. Like, I went and reread some books that I haven't read in a long time by Black authors or about Blackness and the Black experience. It's about to be Women's History Month, and there are plenty of articles, books, documentaries, movies, things that will highlight women or just expand your understanding of what it's like to be a woman in the world, right? That's what these months are about. They're about highlighting the experiences that we are not often thinking about. And if you're a person like me, right, a male who kind of walks the line of most privileges, these are really important opportunities to just dive into topics we don't often think about. And that is what I learned in February. It was eclectic. It was all over the place, and I loved it because I love learning. And any opportunity to reflect on that learning is a win for me. And maybe, just maybe, it brought you some value too. Thanks for sticking around. If you're still here, I mean subscribe. You stuck around. Share with friends. You're still here. Either way, thanks for being here. Stay skillful, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.